Welcome to Studio 23 Nashville with your hosts Jennifer Herron and Bryan Cumming. Today's very special guest is Alan Ross.
Hello, I'm Bryan Cumming.
And I'm Jennifer Herron. Welcome to Studio 23 Nashville.
We do music by investing our time and attention into the lives of creative songwriters and musicians. Today, we have one with us now, Mr. Alan Ross.
Hey guys, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh my gosh, this guy is multi-talented.
Oh,
Not
God.
just music.
Yes.
The boundaries. The sky's the limit.
Yeah. He's a wonderful singer, wonderful songwriter. He's been on all sides of the music business, but he's also a writer. He's produced over 30 books. If you like sports, he's your guy.
Yeah, my husband would be right here with you talking nonstop all night long. NFL is your thing, right?
Well, the NFL particularly, yeah, but I've written books on sports history for virtually every sport there is: golf, hockey, basketball, baseball. I think we've got 8 baseball books out. These are team histories, basically told through quotes. The researching and compiling that goes through finding quotes from all their great players, managers, opponents, and putting it together where it tells the story of like the Chicago Cubs or the New York Yankees or the Pittsburgh Steelers or Cleveland Browns or whoever.
Has Jeopardy contacted you, by the way?
No.
They're always in need of good answers, right?
I used to page Jeopardy, however.
Oh, really?
There was a page on Jeopardy.
Oh, my
Not to steal
amazing.
whatever, we were going to talk about that later.
Okay,
That
wait.
is
I got to
fair.
know, what was the page on Jeopardy since you brought it up? What was it?
Well, what we did was, as a page, is we would just simply seat the audience and wait for Art Fleming to come out and do his, hi everyone, welcome to Jeopardy, and do the game show after that.
Interesting. Now, you were a page on a big show that made a big influence on me. A lot of folks that wanted to go into broadcasting. Johnny Carson as well?
That's right. That was during my college years. That's the best college job a kid could ever have. And I was part of the guest relations staff at NBC at 30 Rock. And part of the assignments, you weren't assigned it every night, but there were 3 different stages to working the Tonight Show. You were seating the audience, or you were working the ground level on the level where the cameras were, or you were behind stage and you were giving out the keys to the makeup room and to the guest rooms where the artists would appear.
So you
And
came in contact with them, Johnny
yeah.
Carson and Ed McMahon?
Oh yeah, and boy, some of the things that I could say that I would just choose to not say on camera.
But this was New York.
It was New York City. That was back when the Tonight Show had a good long run in New York. Most people don't know that. They tend to associate it with L.A. But they had a good long run in New York. Everyone could Google it and find out how long. But that coincided during my college years. And I actually did 2 stints. You were only allowed to work, I think it was a total of 18 months as a page. So I quit after 12 months to just renew more time into my studies. And then my senior year, I said, hey, I think I'd like to go back to work at NBC. That's a heck of a job. And the parties, oh my goodness.
I want to hear about those parties.
Well, you ended up in New York City for your music career not long after that.
Absolutely. There was so much going on concurrently my senior year. I was asked to be a part of a folk group called Children of Rain. We were almost immediately signed by Dot Records and had a 45 out called Get Together, which became known as the peace anthem for the 60s, not by us, but by the Youngbloods. But up until you and I had this exchange this past weekend, I thought we were the first group to ever have it out as a single. It turns out we were the second group to have it out as a single. And
that was in 67.
It was in 1966 that came out.
66,
April
that's
of 1966 that was released.
Oh, that's
Youngblood's version came out first in 67.
That's it.
Bombed, and then came back through just a series of fluke circumstances in 69 and was a hit. So,
Well, I've been learning more about the Children of Rain because there's been a renewed interest in the group because of another kind of a fluke accident.
Bryan, the flukiest thing that's happened to me in 51 years professionally. This past summer, I received an email from a British journalist, music journalist named Rob Cochran, who wrote me to say, are you Alan Ross from the Children of Rain? Well, let me tell you how many emails I've gotten about the Children of Rain in my lifetime. 0. Yeah. And I was stunned that anyone would even know of who we were because we did not create much of a clamor when we came out. Our record bombed. And he had found online an acetate of ours that was on an Illinois online record store in Skokie or someplace. And he he was attracted by the name. Children of Rain fascinated him. And his niche as a writer, as a music journalist, is to find what he likes to call quality obscura. So in his email to me and asking me about all this, whatever happened and why didn't the Children of Rain ever make it? I wrote him back and I said, you talk about quality obscura, sir. You are talking about obscura oblivioni here.
Well, would you clarify for us what is an acetate?
Glad you asked that. That's true. An acetate no longer exists really in our technology today. But it's much like an album, and it had grooves in it, much like a vinyl record. But it only had the capacity to play maybe 15, 16, 17 plays before the thing wore out. And all you would hear would just be the horrible sound of crackles in the grooves and clicks and just out and out scratches. But Rob came across this copy that had been played lightly, and I don't think there were more than half a dozen, maybe 8, 10 copies of the acetate made. How 50 years later this winds up in a record store in Illinois, and he puts out $200 to pay for this acetate.
Oh, wow.
And he said, I did this on one thing. That name hooked me, Children of Rain. So really, as a result of his interest in us, we have elected to re-release a 9-song album, which is going to come out on December 15th, and on CD Baby. It'll go through all the digital outlets. You know them all.
You're not going to do a vinyl version of the
We are
album?
not going to do a
That'd be
vinyl
great.
version.
Okay.
It would be a good version. but,
So 9 songs that were...
that are all Children of Rain songs from that era that were never released. And it's nice. One of the things that I think we had always had hoped for and wished for was some sort of validation from those years. The woman and the key singer in the group, Pam Meacham, later became my first wife and the mother of my 3 children. That just became one of 3 incarnations. Bryan, you and I were talking about this not long ago in regards to Dino Valenti, the writer of Get Together. And Pam and I started out, and with her older brother Dennis, as Children of Rain. 2 years later, we were over with Philips Records, and the producers at Philips did not like the name Children of Rain. Too negative, get something else. So we came up with Ross Legacy. That's also a rare record to get that single. And from there, that was sort of a country folk rock record that we put out. And the producers at Philips said, you ought to go down to Nashville and we'll pay for you, promotion trip. Let's go down there and hit Nashville. So we came down in the summer of '69, went around and did all the radio stations and fell in love with it. We hit, one of the stops we made was at Tree Publishing, and one of this town's big producers named Buddy Killen said, if you guys get out of the remainder of your contract at Philips, I'll produce you. So we went back and we made up the story that we were just getting out of the music, but we've had it with this business, just so that we could get out of, be released from our contract at Philips, and then so that Buddy could record us. And we rolled up the carpet, and I quit my job. I had a great job at NBC, and we came down here, and then we did a 3rd name change to just our names, Pam and Alan Ross. And we're on, as I was mentioning to some of the fellas here, the crew, we're doing weekly regular slots on the Noon Show and the Ralph Emery Show as weekly regular guests for 6 years, back from 1970 through 76, as Pam and Alan Ross. So
Christmas is a child's face, all lit up like a Christmas tree. Children are the saving grace. Oh, what Christmas should be. All the hope of people in the world is written in their eyes on Christmas.
we didn't get any discography going though. Even though Buddy produced us, our songs were unreleased. And it became something that, yeah, that name is sort of like long gone, except if you're my age or older and a Nashville viewer.
Well, there's so much to talk about
I
here.
know. And some more with Children of Rain. You may recognize something they sang and not realize it was them when we come back on Studio 23 Nashville.
All of us here at Studio 23 Nashville would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Visit Hickman County, the Hickman County Department of Tourism. World Music Nashville. Expedia Cruise Ship Centers, Nashville West. And the Law Office of Lavelle Glanton. Hickman County, Tennessee. It feels a lot like home, or how home should feel. Come by, sit a spell. Soak in the goodness that inspired Minnie Pearl to write about this special place. Visit Hickman County, Tennessee's hidden treasure.
Well, we've done a lot of things in this studio for a couple of decades.
Going back at least 15, 17 years, I think it is now. So.
It's a lot of fun. And, well, most of your songs, as I think it's fair to say, focus on sort of Scottish themes and lyrics. You've really, that seems to be a very rich area for you.
Well, a lot of what we cut here, we cut, I think, 16 out of the 17 Celtic songs that are on 2 albums here at Studio 23. But actually, that's really just sort of like one period of my musical career.
Yeah.
Going
that's
back
true.
to, the 60s in New York City and folk music and all that.
Well,
so.
we got time to talk about that. So anyway, this is a song that is not at all about Scottish history.
Not a bit. No, this is part of our recent project, our current project, I should say. And it really does reprise the 60s. And the title, Bobby Hop, it's back in a time when it was all about Bobby socks and sock hops. So it seemed natural to use the metaphor of Bobby Hop as the focal point for this song. And
well, and also this is really the first time on this show that we've used tracks to accompany the performance. But there's a very good reason for that. It's because we put so much work into the tracks. We just love what it does for the song. And
absolutely.
So we're going to perform along with the track. And I want to thank you for bringing this song and helping inspire me to do all those instruments. You're going to hear a saxophone. And it's not going to be played by me right now. It was played on an earlier session for the song.
Your viewers need to know how the great work that is done in here in the tracks, not just myself, but all the artists that come in here to record. So.
Well, I really enjoyed this song because it seems like you captured a whole lot of your personal past, but it's really a portrait of American culture from the 50s and 60s. And
this pretty much chronicles the 50s, which was my generation. That was my formative generation growing up, the years for me when music first caught hold, and there were so many icons back then. I couldn't begin to list them all, but
a lot of them are in the song.
Yeah, I think there are 53 historical elements mentioned in Bobby Hop, so you're all going to be tested on this later on.
Start counting them, and we're going to have a contest for who can get the closest to 53. All right. Those phone lines are open.
Soda shops, long tail finned cars, and genuine silver screen stars. We flipped on our black and white TVs. Built in Berlin, duck and cover, Truman dumps, MacArthur, while Bill Haley rocked around the clock. Jordan Joe and Marilyn, he or she, Christine Jorgensen, and 25-year-old Elizabeth's crowned queen. You could still drink water from the tap, McCarthy's pink old commie rats, and Thompson hits the shot, heard around the world. Where is Bobby Hop? Oh, where did he go? Can you tell me where is Bobby Hop? Oh, they say that he was rock and roll.
loved to stroll. They say that he was rock and roll. That was Bobby Hop. How I miss him so. Where's Bobby Hop? Ike was boss in Washington with that tricky dick riding shotgun. Korea wound down, but baby, it's cold outside. Davy Crockett, coonskin caps, shade Mohican haircuts, and Bannister's Miracle Mile in just under 4. All at once the king appears, James Dean dies, floor lights here, native dancer and Nashua folding the derby big tie. Gunsmoke and pantyhose, turnpikes, and the greatest show on earth. Sputnik is launched and the space race is on. Where is Bobby Hop? Oh, where did he go? Can you tell me where is Bobby Hop? They say that he was rock and roll. Yeah, he lived to live, he loved to stroll. A dancer from head to toe. That was Bobby Hop. How I miss him so. Where's Bobby Hop? Where's Bobby Hop? Where's Bobby Hop? Where's Bobby Hop? And what could be better than filter-tip cigarettes? Rosa Parks, Mount Everest, Old Town and Meet the Press. They were blowing off A-bombs in our own backyard. T-Bird, Xerox machines, High Noon and Salk's vaccine, Bob and Justine on American Bandstand. Bandstand around the world in 80 days. 3D movies, Mantle and Maze. Our days stretched from here to eternity. Where is Bobby Hop? Oh, where did he go? Can you tell me where is this Bobby Hop? They say that he was rock and roll. Yeah, he lived to live, he loved to stroll. A rocker from head to soul. That was Bobby Hop. How I miss him so. Where's Bobby Hop? Where's Bobby Hop? Where's Bobby Hop? Where is Bobby Hop? Doo-wop. Where is Bobby Hop?
Ross and talking about some of the great things Children of Rain did over the years. And one thing in particular, Banaka. Remember that stuff? You sprayed it?
Banaka mouth spray. That's our very
do they still
first
make it?
jingle.
You had a jingle for
Called
Banaka?
Camp Banaka. Camp Banaka, we're all behind you. Camp Banaka, awfully glad we found you. Take one breath, and you're...
Yeah, you squirt it.
Oh,
Fresh
Take one
breath.
squirt, and that magic little breath is there, or whatever it was.
did you think you were going into the jingle business? Was it a plan? Or
No, it
how
was
did
just
happen?
the next step for the Children of Rain to get into the studio. We were primarily a writing, rehearsing, and recording group. And when Rob Cochran asked me, why did we never hear of you? He was so complimentary. He said, by my recollection, you were as good as anybody out in the day. But there was no reason for anyone to have heard us because we never played out. We played, I think, 3 gigs, period, over the 2 years. Ross Legacy, I don't think we did one single public performance in the 2 years we were together, but we had a record out. And the idea back then was you didn't cover material. It was the kiss of death. You wrote your own material, and that's all we did. We concentrated on writing, getting into the studio, and making records. So the jingle came along. A good friend of mine had a sister that was the creative director at Westware Bartell, an agency that's no longer in business. But Camp Banaka came up, and he wrote the jingle, but he hired us to do the playing and the singing. And they had, it's kind of like, it reminds me of the Fruit of the Loom group. They dressed up radishes and onions in these full-size body costumes and marched them out on stage. And garlic and
Yeah, for
all these
bad
things
breath,
that would give
yeah.
you bad breath. And we sang about, Camp Banaka. They were all convening at Camp Banaka,
I love it.
Yeah,
You saw that jingle on TV.
I did, and it was just hysterical, and we were sort of embarrassed to be a part of it in the same breath, if you know what I mean. It wasn't like we teach the world to sing, in a Coke jingle or whatever,
But your voice was on national television.
yes, it was. Yeah,
singing
that was the first experience with getting residual checks, and we got several of them before it, went out of cycle, and they
Yeah.
didn't.
And then later you were writing the jingles, not just singing them.
Jingles became the major part of my musical focus in my 45 years in Nashville. And that started almost as soon as we got here, because Pam and I were seen on the noon show. We were regulars even very early on. And a guy with a jingle company came to us and said, I've got something I want you on. And then that led to another and another and another. And then when Pam became pregnant, she was sort of out of the mix, and then it just became on me. And I loved the studio. That, to me, back when we were still doing the Children of Rain days, the studio is where I lived and thrived. And in fact, if people go to my website, I hope they might show the web address at the end of the show, but there's a whole section on the Children of Rain, and there's stories about our stage appearances, like the one our very first appearance, where I almost fainted on stage. And we were supposed to do a half-hour show, and after 2 tunes, I said to both Pam and Dennis, "We've got to leave the stage." And they said, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Leave the stage now." And we were in front of like 400 people at a father-daughter luncheon in Tuxedo Park, New York. So we get off stage, and they say, "What in the heck?" I said, "Guys, it was either that or you were going to be scraping me up off the floor. I was in the process of fainting on stage." I've had to deal with stage fright almost all my life, and it's been something to get a hold of anxiety. Now they call it anxiety, and now they have things that you can take for anxiety. Like I took 15 Klonopin before I did this show. Just kidding.
Before we
Just
turn the
kidding.
lights on, yeah. Isn't that amazing? You make such wonderful music, but it was the studio that you felt most comfortable. Didn't need that
Absolutely.
crowd
And
there in front of
TV.
you.
When
Yeah.
we did over 400 live television shows on WSMV, and over that 6-year period, and was relaxed as I could possibly be, but get in front of an audience, and it all just came. I obviously got a hold of that over a period of time. The more you're exposed to it, sort of like, I guess today they'd call it cognitive therapy. Expose yourself to the thing you're most afraid of, or whatever. And over time, that just became something I became much more, just comfortable with.
Alan, I'd like to ask you more about the time with Buddy Killen and Tree Music. He was your producer for a while.
Oh, and mentor too. Buddy
And-
was like a second father
And
to
you
me.
became signed as a songwriter.
Songwriter
at
and as
Tree.
artists, right.
And did he have a studio in the building at that
Yeah,
point?
Tree was located back on 16th Avenue, back at the right where South Street dead-ended into 16th, if you were coming from the east, I guess. Yeah, they had one of these old, just an old ramshackle house. You'd never know it was the #1 country music publisher in the world. And, people like Curly Putman were writing Green Green Grass at Home back at that time. And Dave Kirby writing Streets of Baltimore. And
So were you writing for the Nashville market at all? Or did Buddy try to guide your writing style? Or how did that work?
Here's how that happened. On our trip, that promotion trip that Mercury and Phillips sent us down here to, when we met Buddy, he said, "Get out of your contract and I'll produce you, and I'll sign you as a writer." He just said, I think you'd be a fresh breath for country music. Well, the first thing he did when he took us into the studio was he said, "Get in the car. We're going to Muscle Shoals Sound in Sheffield, Alabama, or Muscle Shoals, Alabama." And so we got to cut with that famous Swampers group with
David Hood,
Barry the Bear, Travis Womack, Eddie Hinton, and David Hood, and all that great group that has cut millions of hit records for everybody.
Did it work? Did it feel like a good fit?
It felt like a great fit, but still the record, he couldn't place it. And it led to our leading Buddy after a couple of years. Although I loved that man. He was like a father to me, such a comfortable person to be around, and the way he could encourage you. They say that athletic coaches have one or two routes to go. They can either just jump down your throat, or they can put a hand on your shoulder.
Yeah.
And Buddy was this kind of a guy, and I respond to that kind of coaching. And really
He
miss
was a
that
musician himself, so I feel like he could step
Oh,
back and
yes.
feel. Yeah.
Buddy used to refer to himself as the third string bass player on the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
And he wrote a classic standard called Forever. Hold me, kiss me, tell me sweetly that you love me forever. I don't know if you remember that song. Or if you're 85 years old or older out there, folks, you might remember that.
Now, yourself, did you get cuts here in the Nashville market? Any of the
I had
Opry
several
stars?
cuts. One of the Opry stars, Jeannie Pruitt, cut my song called Oh So Good. But we realized that, and that leads back into your question. We came down here, we made a decision in New York. We were married at that time, Pam and I, that we did not want to really raise a family in New York City. But also, just as fate would have it, in 1969, the year we moved down here, Bob Dylan came out with Nashville Skyline. And he did a lot of country stuff in there, Lay Lady Lay, and folk country. Mm-hmm. And so that was our record on Phillips. Sort of mirrored that. It was an original song by our ex-Children of Rain member, Pam's brother Dennis wrote it. Makes You Want to Sigh. And the people at Phillips said, that's when they said, go down to Nashville. We'll spend the money for you to go down on a promotion trip. But in the back of our minds, what we wanted to do was become country artists. Pam was raised in Arizona, and she and Denny had sung from the time they were this high, and sung nothing but country songs. And I bought into it. Buck Owens was coming out with songs like Sweet Rosie Jones, and I fell in love with it. And we were still in New York City, and we're saying, well, we're kind of ducks out of water up here. Well, let's roll up the rug. And when Buddy said, I'll sign you as a writer and I'll produce you as an artist, we said, we don't need to hear anything more. Let's go. So
there was some folk sounds mixed in. George Hamilton IV was able to cross over,
Oh,
and
I
carry-
love George
yeah.
Hamilton IV. He almost cut one of my songs too, one of my better country songs. He held it and held it and held it, but it never quite got cut.
I
so.
could hear your sound translating over to his recordings. He had that style.
I had a funny little instance with George Hamilton IV. It was when we first came to Nashville, Buddy got us some tickets to the Opry. And he didn't just get us tickets. This was back at the old Ryman Auditorium. And if you remember how the way those seats would go, you could seat 58 people in the back rows, but they would narrow down the length of the number of people that a pew could accommodate. Mm. Well, in the very, very first pew, you could only sit 2 people. And Pam and I sat down there, and George Hamilton IV was on the Grand Ole Opry. This is 1969. And he's starting to play, and he spies us, and he gives us this, like, what are you doing here, look, And we're thinking, golly, we've made it. George Hamilton IV knows who we are. And, I think he was just surprised to see a guy with hair over the length of his collar sitting in the front row, like, what are you doing here? This is This is the mecca of country music, you know. But yeah, that's the closest shave that we had with George Hamilton IV. But great artist. I really admired him. The only song of his, I still do one of his songs. His first hit record was a song called A Rose and a Baby Ruth, written by John D. Loudermilk. And I still sing that song because it's a beauty.
Amazing.
You had more of a country career than I ever suspected.
Yeah.
Oh, and we went on from there for years.
Well, we're going to talk some more about all of that. Yeah, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back on Studio 23 Nashville.
Straighten up and find right.
Now available, Come Out Swingin', the new CD by the Bryan Cumming Jazz Quartet. Come Out Swingin' is available at studio23nashville.com and all major digital retailers.
Say, come out swinging.
Come Out Swingin' by the Bryan Cumming Jazz Quartet. Get yours today. All of us here at Studio 23 Nashville would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Visit Hickman County, the Hickman County Department of Tourism. World Music Nashville. Expedia Cruise Ship Centers, Nashville West. And the Law Office of Lavelle Glanton. Be the envy of the neighborhood. Make your friends jealous. Be the first on your block to get official swag from Studio 23 Nashville, Pinkerton Productions, and Bryan Cumming. Just visit our store at the bottom of the page and order yours today.
We're going to do one of his famous Scottish Celtic songs.
This song, The Seven Men of Glenmoriston, is actually part of a Celtic tetralogy that I wrote about the Bonnie Prince Charlie, who is arguably the most famous character in Scottish history. And we have the 4 songs spread out over both Celtic albums. And it tells about the fact that after he had been ousted and routed by the British, he was on the run. And because of the people who were his supporters throughout England and Scotland, they found a way to get him he had to dress up as a woman one time to get safe passage over to Skye, where he thought the French fleet would be waiting to pick him up to guide him safely back, albeit in exile, to France. But instead, they were not there, and it was another 9 months before they came. That's where the 7 Men of Glenmoriston entered the picture, and they scavenged for the young prince. They hid him, as one of the lines in the songs goes, in castles, and they hid him in caves. It was a far cry from what the Bonnie Prince had once envisioned when he set foot on shore and had hoped to wear the crown of Scotland once again. Not to be, unfortunately. But this is the 7 Men of Glenmoriston. Just as sunrise peaks over the great glen, a lone figure of a man sheds the shade of night, as Loglagan catches the first gleam of morning. He again takes flight. No peace, no rest for the weary, no comfort, no spoils of victory, running frantic and blind through the western highlands and taking refuge like a thief. What price true loyalty would you give of your life for a friend? Have you heard of the would-be king and the 7 men of Glenmoriston? With the gallant rising behind him, and Flora no longer beside him,
The bonny prince drew strength from these 7 men of Glenmoriston. And now he mourns his beloved Scotland, and the campaign come and gone. They had the British on their heels, but they let it slip away. If they'd only kept up the advance, boldness was their one and only chance. There's little left but what might have been for the 7 men of Glenmoriston. The 7 men of Glenmoriston. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They hid him in castles and caves, from Badenoch to Borrowdale, and slit the throats of any redcoat sniffing around the town of Glenmoriston. You know they go by the name of McPherson, MacDonald's a pair of Camerons. Their clever wiles kept their leader alive. These 7 men of Glenmoriston. And now he's gone from his beloved Scotland. He's in exile back in France. The hero's quest came up short, or they let it slip away. And now the white silk cockade is no more. The standard once raised is lowered. There's nothing left but what might have been for the 7 men. Yeah, the 7 men of Glenmoriston. Yeah, yeah, And just as twilight creeps over the great glen, and the spell of Charlie's year still hangs in the mist, but there's nary a legend nor word told of the 7 men.
Okay, we've got some stuff to show you.
Oh.
Our guest, Alan Ross, is an author. He's got a famous father, and, well, you want to show that picture now?
I want to show this picture because his infatuation with records started really early on. That is you.
It is so ironic that this subject matter should have surfaced when I was 4.5 years old. A 1949 cover for Good Housekeeping that my dad did. And He abused a lot of the child labor laws. He didn't pay us anything.
Did he make you sit
There were no
at that?
child labor laws back then, by the way. So
Did you have to sit in that position for 6 hours for him to get it just right?
I think it was Tom or Chris that asked me that earlier, and actually he would take Polaroids of us. But yes, we did also pose. I remember posing for interminable lengths of time, not like for a portrait where people would week after week kind of thing and come back for sittings, but. He would make us work, and he lit them and all. He was an outstanding photographer as well, and
So it was him and Norman Rockwell at the time that were putting out.
he was a peer of Rockwell's. And during the heyday, the height of Rockwell's era, my dad, who wound up doing 130 covers for Good Housekeeping, wound up doing a half dozen covers for the Saturday Evening Post at the absolute pinnacle of Rockwell's fame. People think that Norman Rockwell did every one of the Saturday Evening Post covers during the 40s and early 50s. But actually, I think I read where he had wound up doing only like one a month, or only maybe even as little as 4 a year that he did. Yet people always associate the Saturday Evening Post covers as the domain of Norman Rockwell.
Interesting.
It sure is.
Beautiful history there.
It was fun. Yeah, just fun. It was fun to model for him, too. I used to hang out in connection with some of this music thing, too. I do remember the record player and the records, the colored records that were in there. But I used to just go in with my toys in my dad's art studio and play. My first exposure to music was classical music. My dad would play Chopin and Rachmaninoff, and my favorite was Khachaturian, the saber dance, Khachaturian's saber dance. And so I'd be playing, and all this wonderful classical music, which my dad loved to paint to, was going on in my head, and that's what I grew up in. He would show me off at some of their parties and say, "Alan, what's your favorite song?" And I'd say, "The Saber Dance by Khachaturian." And he'd say, you little, their friends would want to like, you little brat, yeah. But a lot of fun, and that's, it was just a very great comfort to me to be in his studio where it was just peaceful and quiet and a wonderful setting to be, and I could be with my dad and never talk to him or disturb him, but just occupied myself.
Interesting. You've got a couple of show and tells in your hand as well.
We've got some of Alan's books here, and he's done a lot on sports. Here's for Cubs fans.
Well, Cubs Pride, yeah, just because last year they were the world champions after such a long wait, as everyone knows. And we wound up doing, as I said, I think eight books. These are so much fun to do because of the research that was involved, quotes from people like Carl Hubble and, Ernie Banks and people that were great, either opponents of the Cubs or Cubs icons. And we tell the story of it. It takes a lot of, like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. I'd have these, rooms full of quotes, and then I would just tell the story chronologically from beginning to end of a team's history, whether it was the Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, Chicago White Sox, the Chicago Cubs, St. Louis Cardinals. We did them as well, and it's a different way to tell a story without having a lot of boring narrative by an author. These quotes all have punchy, things to say about them, and they're still out there. You can get them on eBay, and the reason why I'm not still doing them is that both publishing companies that I wrote for went defunct, and that's unfortunately a product of the times.
Very nice.
You were just telling us that your favorite book is the one that's not about sports at all, but about lighthouses.
It is. Ever since I can remember, I was a fan of lighthouses, and I got the opportunity through Criswell Freeman, who's a well-known author here from Nashville himself, who is known as the Quote Doctor. He started a whole series of quote books, and I first went to work editing for Criswell. And when my articles, my football and sports articles began appearing in national magazines, Criswell came to me one day and said, "How would you like to do a series of sports books?" And I said, "Wow, where do I sign?" So during this, we started out doing books on golf, books on hockey, on general, books on baseball, not team history sports like Cubs Pride, but on the history of an entire sport. And then I told him, I said, I would love to do a book on lighthouses if you'd, and he said, let's do one. So I got to travel some with this and went up to the great library at the Mystic Seaport Museum in Mystic, Connecticut, and got a lot of the information for, as I mentioned earlier, for the song Bell Rock Light. That all came out of the archives of their library, and the stories that are told at sea about lighthouse keepers and that job, that lonely job, and the I mean, my gosh, just the perils that they were subjected to, and the loneliness, and one time, one thing that just quickly comes to mind was that a lighthouse keeper died, and the boat didn't come back till spring to bring supplies to the family, so they had to stand him up in a shack on the island, frozen, because they didn't, this was a northern lighthouse, and pray that it didn't thaw, before the spring, and the boat could take him back and give him a proper burial in the mainland. But there's so much of that kind of stuff, and the lighthouse keepers are just a breed unto themselves.
Definitely. They're a beauty to see, though, aren't they?
Oh,
the different
these
designs.
Sentinels of the sea, I call them, and
And I guess you climb the stairs all the way to the top. It's neat to see the dimension glass if you do go up inside.
The ones that are still open now, many of them are closed. Almost all of them are owned by the Coast Guard now, and they're off limits. But some have been refurbished, and the ones that they have done, they will let you, crawl, you can do that curl walk up to and there's nothing like looking out of the top of a lighthouse. It's just, very, very special.
Beauty, definitely. You had mentioned your website earlier. We keep mentioning all the books and everything that you offer. What is your website again?
The website is www.rossmusic.net. And on it, it's sort of like an homage to my entire career as a writer and musician. There's music tabs and a writer, author tab. And there's also the last two tabs recently. I've changed to the Children of Rain because of the dust that Rob Cochran kicked up with his article.
Yeah.
And as we were telling Holly earlier, many, many pictures and great stories about the early days.
So what I want to know is, when I talked to Bryan and he said, hey, we've been recording and Alan is just so great, but I am so proud of the sounds we came up with. So was there some different instrumentation here, or what was so magnificent that you're bragging on?
Well, when Alan has gotten serious about the Scottish Celtic stuff, it's been a real adventure to take authentic Scottish instruments. We're talking about bagpipes. We had to hire a guy from Kentucky because we couldn't find anybody from within 50 miles. He's really one of the best. And then and all these pipes and authentic Scottish instruments to go along with Alan's acoustic guitar. And then Alan said, you know what? I think we need some rock guitar. And
oh boy!
So I cranked up the heavy guitar stuff. I mean, it was really an interesting combo.
Well, not only that, first of all, anytime anyone appears in the studio with Bryan, it's just total magic. And I heard Teresa Neal say the same thing. And I said, and she almost said it in a way that was like, this is something special I have with Bryan. And I'm laughing as I'm watching this thing.
Chemistry, yeah.
Everybody who records with Bryan feels this way about this man. It is such a special thing. And I'm telling you, there is a magic that happens in the symbiosis, in this exchange between artist and co-producer, and it's just almost I can't quite put the right word on it, but I would like to add one footnote to those sessions and how some of the uniqueness of what we came up with. We wanted to put some what we called some heathen drum sounds on, because the Scots music is filled with this wonderful kind of just not a conventional rhythmic sound. But so Bryan had these empty 5-gallon, 10-gallon water jugs that were empty and laying around in the back room here. And he said, I know just the thing. So we brought out these empty big plastic water jugs, and we start just pounding them and counter rhythm to each other. And wow, we got a magnificent track out of that. That really is one of the key points of Raise the Clans. And
it makes me see that rugged coast, the surf pounding against the rocks, and just how brutal and primitive it is. And the music, especially, and you were in saying, let's make it bigger, more reverb, sometimes that kind of the way it was, the sounds we were getting were very evocative of the drama. This is just a drama. You can just imagine
so much so.
a Scottish warrior up on the hill overlooking this expanse, and it's so prehistoric almost. You know, it just has a real primitive quality.
I know a lot of the artists that come into Studio 23 come in for sessions that they are very happy with leading with that day. But most of the tracks that Bryan and I work on, we spend multiple sessions on before because we just know, well, we're never going to pass this way again. That's my feeling about it. I'm not going to re-record Seven Men of Glen Morriston or Raise the Clans again. We're doing it one time and we're going to do it right.
Once those creative juices get going, y'all are full speed ahead. All right. Well, we've got more of Studio 23 Nashville, including congratulations to you, coming up next.
Oh, my.
Stick around.
Do you want to win friends and influence people? Don't buy a book. Advertise on Studio 23 Nashville. It's easy. Just contact us at studio23nashville@gmail.com. Hickman County, Tennessee. It feels a lot like home, or how home should feel. Come by, sit a spell. Soak in the goodness that inspired Minnie Pearl to write about this special place. Visit Hickman County, Tennessee's hidden treasure.
Cold as the Dickens, rain turned to hail. We were caught in the tail of a nor'easter gale. 12 miles out on a terrible night. With luck, we'll make 5 nests before the first light. But we're swallowed in darkness by the demon North Sea, pounded by waves, Lord, when will it cease? A fog-thick piece super you could cut with a knife. Beware of Inch Cape Reef, hard rudder to right. Where's the bell? Where's our escape route? But don't they know that we're in dire straits? Where's that beacon burning so bright? Where in hell is that Bell Rock light? Now high in the tower, the keepers half crazed, the lanterns shattered, the winds doused the flame, and the assistants unconscious fell by debris when the lamp exploded into smithereens, and the fog bell cannot be heard 10 feet from shore. But we must keep her lit, the lighthouse keeper swore. For who knows who needs our service from these deadly reef shoals. We're honor bound to save each mariner's soul with our bell, our good light station. But no one knows that we're in dire straits. Where's that beacon burning so bright? Where in hell is that Bell Rock light? There came a lull in the storm, an answer to prayer. Then a lost seaman shouts in the thick salt air. There, over there, look through the gray at the two men waving torches from the tower rail, saved by the bell, saved by a heartbeat, rescued from the most direful straits. Where's that beacon burning so bright? At last, there's the Bell Rock light. Thanks to God's grace for the Bell Rock light.
And we've got a few more exciting little details to overturn now.
Congratulations. Hey, I saw you were nominated for an award.
Well, it was nice. It's always been nice to be put into consideration. And the Just Plain Folks Music Awards, which they claim is the largest grassroots music organization in the world. They have over 240,000 members worldwide. Culled through something like 125,000 entries to come up with 20 entrants in each, many categories. But in the Celtic song category, they have Colonel Anne from my most recent album, Fogs of August, which we all cut right here, as one of their best Celtic song of the year. And for them, the year, this isn't just for the year, it's for the whole period from 2013 through 2017. So there's a lot of product that came out during that time, and I guess they had so much product to wade through, they couldn't do it on an annual basis. So yes, quite an honor. Thank you.
That is huge with the number of people that they were going through and the number of entries and stuff. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
amazing.
That's the song that leads off our Fogs of August album.
Congratulations.
We've also done a lot of jingles together. I mean, I discovered organizations I didn't know existed. The Tennessee TVA, Knoxville.
The Knoxville TVA Employees Credit Union, we've done several
See
of their
there?
jingles, and I've been doing their jingles since 1985. So yeah, I'm proud to have a client that goes over 30 years. And we've done some great work down here. It's hard to not trip into the area of financial institutions and car dealerships if you're a jingle singer. But jingles have been, as I said, my way of life musically here in Nashville. Not out on the road, been singing in the studios. But once in a while we get to sing for some big time products. And
you might be credited with a very memorable jingle for Nashville people, right?
There was one that lasted,
hook.
one specific one that lasted for 15 years, ran all through the 80s and into the early 90s. And maybe some of the listeners might remember it. It starts out something like this. For a real country sausage, best you ever tried, pick up a pound or two of Tennessee pride.
And that was you.
And that was me.
Oh my gosh.
That played on the Grand Ole Opry and everywhere. That was an amazing jingle. That was Alan Ross. You've
Well-
got to check him
And
out.
you heard it right here on Studio 23 Nashville. Thank you, Alan, for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.